my first question to you is, anyone if you can answer, wishes to, the thing is that during the COVID, there were COVID-19 scenario, there were different set of challenges. Okay, their production was slumped. It affected several industries like automotive and the consumer electronics. The demand goes high. Okay, there was supply chain disruptions. But after that, last couple of months, we have had reports that the situation started easing. Okay, but still there are some additional obstacles that still needs to be tackled to revive the sector's production soon. So, would you like to highlight some additional obstacles or the challenges that needs to be tackled so that the production can be revived like back prior to 2 years back?
Let me take one part of the question and then Anurag can come in. As far as the semiconductor supply chain disruption is concerned, the situation has significantly improved, right?
Yes.
I would go to the extent of saying that maybe 70-80% of the parts are now back to pre-COVID lead times of 4 weeks to 8 weeks.
Yes.
Particularly memories and all that are probably off the shelf, almost off the shelf. Right? Now,
Yes.
So that's one part of the answer. The second aspect is certain components like the processor for the core or processor core for the servers. Right? Some of the high-end chips that go into high-end applications and some critical components for the automotive industry. Particularly for the high-end vehicles, I would say the high-end sedan kind of vehicles, which require specially custom-built chips, they are still not free flow yet. People are still talking about lead times of 16 weeks, 18 weeks, 20 weeks kind of thing. Of course, nothing is now like 52 weeks or something like the olden days. But they are still not the 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks range. They are still in the 16, 18 weeks. But this constitute about 20% of the total components, approximately. It may be 7, it may be 22, it may be 20 kind of thing. But ballpark, you can say 75 to 80% is back to normal. 20-25% is progressively catching up. But they are also improving by the day. And by luck or otherwise, I don't know how to put it, but the fact is that the inflation, high inflation and the recession in the Western countries have reduced the demand for luxury items into which all the high-end electronics falls into. And that is definitely helping the cause of demand for such products in India. This is the what do you call the traditional supply chain related issue that we had faced with the advent of COVID. Over to you, Anurag.
So I think you just hit the nail on the head. Nijum, what Mr. Krishna has said is absolutely correct. Actually, pre-COVID and post-COVID, there was a little gap in the availability of chips. But as most studies are saying now, the timelines have been shortened. They have been shortened. But if you say that it is going to be coming back to the pre-pandemic levels overnight, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That will take a little while. Then it is also what Mr. Krishna has also said. There is a downturn in the economy of chips, so to say. The demand has gone down. It has shrunk very badly, and that is courtesy the recession in the Western countries. And not only the Western countries, there is a global recession which is happening, and you cannot predict as to why the global recession is happening because it's a multiple number of factors. However, the entire concept of the chips and their demand and supply will always remain. So one cannot just start pegging the entire semiconductor industry or the electronics industry on availability. This gap will always remain. Demands keep going up and down, so you just can't predict that it is a tailor-made situation every time and all the time.
So, when you highlight this, Krishna sir also highlighted the positive vibes and the problems you highlighted. But in 2022, towards the end of December, we have some global research report which stated that that the global semiconductor industry witnessed a growth of only 1.1%. So the thing is that, first of all, do you agree with the statement? If not, why do you think the industry's growth currently stands globally, and how India is moving ahead with the growth?
Semiconductor growth on year-on-year basis, if you look at what was projected or what was predicted as the potential growth for semiconductor from $450 billion, it is going to be $500 billion over the next 25-26, and then going to 900 billion by 2030. And these are all the numbers that have been put out there. Right? And the first part of the post-COVID era, we had seen a trajectory which was sort of aligned with those numbers. Then we saw that suddenly the stagnation started happening, particularly, as I said earlier, the best example, if you take one of the longest lead time items were memories, RAMs, which goes into all the phones and laptops and all that. That suddenly sort of plateaued and then started taking a slightly downward dip of the demand because of the system level demand shortage, or sorry, the reduction in the system level demand shortage. So that is getting reflected in the what do you call the semiconductor growth also. It is not maintaining that positive slope anymore. Either it is flat or it is coming down, but the average is sort of almost flattening out over the last 1 quarter. If you take, definitely the demand has flattened out. That's a fact. But then you also, I'm sure you would have read this, so many companies laying off people in US and all that. So the last thing on their mind is to buy the next TV or next car or the next phone or anything like that. So there is I wouldn't call it's a downturn, but I would say there's a compression of the demand that has happened. So if the demand curve was flat, it has definitely compressed to a narrower range. And most of the products, I would say the volume products, are within this compressed band. And there are a few products lying outside, either below or above this compressed band, but most of that demand is lying within this compressed band, which was earlier a bigger band. So that is what the phenomena we are seeing.
So the second aspect, so in that perspective, when I ask how do you think, how is India moving ahead with this growth? If the global growth rate is only 1.1%, I mean, so what do you think India is stepping into it?
Well, the India consumption story has not changed much, right? The very okay. So let us put it this way: the demand for products which are at the very high end of the system category, like the number of Audi cars that are getting sold, the number of BMWs that are getting sold, or the number of 85-inch TV sets that are getting sold. I'm giving very simple, easy to understand examples. Like that, there are many examples. Anyway, was not very high in India. I mean, they are in few thousands or a few tens of thousands kind of thing. So if they were to grow or compress by a few percent, that's not going to change the volume demand of the big band of components that are required. And they are going into those components which are going into mobiles or the laptops, or any other, we call your tablets, which are used for educational aid now. None of them have significantly compressed in India because the demand is still very sturdy, because our economy, despite the inflation pressures, have overcome or withstood the growth, right? So that way, that big band of demand, that is still fairly intact. So our demand, what we had projected to go from $27 billion of semiconductor consumption in 21-22 to grow to about $75 billion by 25-26, that $75 billion may become $70 billion, but it's not going to become $40 billion. I mean, at least as of now, as of today, I think that's a safe thing to predict. Unless we see in the next 6 months something drastically changing. My only concern always is how will this Russia-Ukraine war flare up further into? Will it become a China joining the bandwagon and North Korea joining the bandwagon? Then we have, it's anybody's guess after that. But otherwise, if it is all remaining in a confined form, I think we'll be in that ballpark. We are not going to be way off. I mean, this is my reading of the future. I'm sure Anurag will have his perspective.
I think you've covered it all, sir. But see, Nijum, 1.1% is a good growth rate to come out of a pandemic. So you coming out of a pandemic after nearly 2 years, and the pandemic is still not over. The life cycle of a pandemic is 5 years. So if you're looking at 1.1%, it's still a growth rate. So whether it is correct or not correct, it's not my competence to comment on that, because it's a study report and it's being touted in most of the publications as well as in the media. But 1.1%, it's in positive, it's in a growth rate. The second part of it, what Mr. Krishna said, I'll just amplify that. See, when you look at the India story, now India story is looking at four basic contours of a square. One is the market, the other is the volumes. The third is the societal elevation. You look at the people who've come from the lower middle class strata to the middle class strata, and from middle class strata to the upper middle class strata in the last 2 or 3 years, in spite of the pandemic. Go into the sociometrics of it, and then you look at the digital connectivity, how it has increased. You are the second largest internet users of the world. At the end of the day, you're the third largest ecosystem of startups, right? So when you are having all these things, I think the Indian story is pretty insulated from what is going to happen in the future. You are good. Your metrics are very different from what the Western world has today.
See, India becoming the third largest, what do you call, buyer of cars was a major, eye opener for all of us, right? See, what it points out is this is where the demographics really plays. The demographic advantage is playing out exactly in this time.
I think we are also one of the largest smartphone users also.
Yes.
See, the phone usage per person for the purpose of communication has gone to a level where, with the internet proliferating, has gone from communication to an entertainment device and navigation device. You think of everything else. Phone conversation is just incidental. Everything else is where it is getting used more, and that application is being understood and gainfully used by the younger generation. That's where the age demographics work to a great advantage for India, and that's the reason why it is still staying robust.
So when you speak of the entire semiconductor industry, I mean, one thing in this ecosystem is now, which is gaining very traction, is the advanced packaging. Okay, so which is also having a lot of technical challenges. Okay, there are some additional way also. The skilled workforce, there are lack of investments, which also study says. So how do you like to highlight the importance of advanced packaging? Okay, so I mean, and if there are any, and how do you like to what are your views, and how you can we can boost the packaging segment
amongst the different called sub segments of semiconductor manufacturing. The lowest hanging fruit is the packaging, right? If you look at the other, and of course, warehousing is also an equally important, warehousing and distribution is also an equally important component there. And also low hanging, provided we get certain things right. And I will briefly explain that. But you look at the manufacturing, we call the stream, you have the wafer manufacturing. Then you have the wafer to scribing and packaging and advanced packaging and assembly test, and then it goes to the warehouse for distribution. And then when it comes to wafer manufacturing, it is not only silicon, but it's also compound semiconductor, both like gallium nitride, gallium arsenide, and those kind of things. When you look at these things, wafer manufacturing, whether it is for silicon or for compound semiconductor, is still very expensive, very high capital intensive, etc. And that is also one of the reasons why not many countries have got onto the bandwagon of semiconductor manufacturing globally. Countries like UK, France, none of them have their own wafer manufacturing, right? But when it comes to packaging and assembly, yes, it's a low-hanging fruit relatively because the capital investment required is less. And today, with the kind of logistics mechanisms that are falling in place in India over the last maybe a decade, approximately maybe 6-8 years, you can see that many of the what you call the building blocks, the packaging industry to become viable in India is coming together. I know the number of international ports, airports are phenomenally increased. Number of high quality seaports have increased. Number of roadway and the kind of highways that we have improved. So getting a wafer from a fab in Korea or Taiwan to, let's say, one of the ports in India. I mean, for example, you take Chennai or Bangalore or Hyderabad or some places like that. You can fly after the shift closes in Taiwan at 6 p.m. You can fly those wafers to India and get it to an assembly house before the shift starts next day morning 7 o'clock. That is possible today, which was not the case earlier. So, and then you have the assembly house properly set up. You are scribing, assembly, package assembly, testing, and putting it back on a flight by the end of that shift, 6 p.m. on that day, to a warehouse in Singapore or Malaysia is also possible. So the turnaround time that is required, whether the wafers fly to India and fly out, the finished good goes to Singapore, is not affecting the throughput of the production of the chips. See, that's the most important aspect. Why would somebody, if Taiwan can produce a wafer, Taiwan can also assemble. If India can assemble it at 30% lower cost and without disrupting that supply mechanism of a turnaround time of 12 hours to 24 hours, I think that story is now holding water. So this is an underlying factor which is making the ATMP attractive. So people think it is investment. It is not the investment. So the moment the finished product is ready, it has to reach a phone manufacturer or a laptop manufacturer or a TV manufacturer or an automobile manufacturer. Because the inventory is nothing but cost. So the financial guy will sit and say, okay, my inventory is sitting in India for 48 hours because the airport is not available or the road is not available. That's not going to fly. That situation has changed. So that is the primary factor why ATMP is looking attractive. And I'm sure before, I'm very hopeful, I would say, very hopeful that before the end of this financial year, India will announce a couple of advanced packaging houses. And this is one aspect. The second aspect is number of companies who are working on, multinational companies, I'm saying, who are working on advanced packaging technology in India, like the Intels of the world. There are many of them. These people are working on the most complex products end-to-end with full ownership of package development, creating the testing facilities, creating the qualification facilities, characterization, and the customer support. All that happening out of India. So the level of skill required to support an ATMP is already there. This is not the case with a wafer fab yet. One is the ability to manage it in the same time frame of turnaround which the corporate would expect, a normal 12-hour, 24-hour turnaround, and the logistical support that is required. Secondly, the people who are required to run this level of activity, both are available today. And in fact, next month, this month, not next month. Today is only 30th. So February 18th, we are going to have the first advanced packaging workshop, both for the industry and academia, with all the top institutes joining together, 18th of February in Delhi and 25th of February in Bangalore, for getting the professionals on advanced packaging together. And the number is approximately 100 already, right? Which is what is making it really look attractive.
Anurag sir, would you like to highlight anything on this?
I think all is covered. I will give you, Nijum, the elephant and the tail analogy in this. So there is a big room from which an elephant has to pass. The elephant can't pass without the tail passing. So advanced packaging of what Mr. Krishna has also said is that tail. So you may be a behemoth making an elephant or making a wafer or whatever you want to, but the tail also has to pass to make the elephant pass. Now, when you look at it, frankly, there's only the aggregation and interconnection of components, frankly. That is what is ATMP at the end of the day. There's nothing beyond that. So there are, in India, when you look at it, and there's a massive amount of push on that also, and that's been very, clearly brought out. So there are 4 points insofar as this is concerned. One is the money, the investment, low. You look at skill, low. Obviously, the labor laws and obviously the labor cost, low. And then you look at the timelines and turnaround, low. So all these 4 make it a very low-hanging fruit, either which way. So in terms of when you look at any kind of a semiconductor industry, when you look at materials, or when you look at equipment, or when you look at packaging, packaging is the lowest hanging fruit, right? So if that be the case, I think we are well poised. We've got everything going. It's just a question of time that packaging is also going to be a very, very big sector here.
Okay, so again, now coming back to the ESDM sector, the government has unleashed a lot of schemes like specs. Okay, and back in 20 and last year, government has also unleashed a $10 billion, PLI scheme for semiconductors. Okay, but so in the coming union budget, do you put forward some recommendations to the government to boost the sectors? What are your recommendations? Do you have any recommendations? Any recommendation from IESA?
Recommendation from IESA for
I mean,
semiconductor.
for the electronics industry and and how to build a semiconductor industry.
Okay, so let me take it as again 2 different parts. For the semiconductor industry, we haven't given any special recommendations because this $10 billion PLI and DLI and all have to play out. I don't think we want to modify that or ask for any, except some finer tweakings are being suggested to make DLI more attractive and make sure that it is implemented fast. The implementation agency should be able to take decisions quickly and all that. These are operational recommendations, but nothing substantial from a budget point of view. Right? When it comes to electronics manufacturing, how to increase India's value proposition in electronics. Today, let me give the example of mobile phones. Though we claim that so much of our mobile phones are getting manufactured 10x, 20x compared to what it was getting made earlier, this is all true and factual. But the important point is the value addition is still only 10 or 15%. 10% at the lowest end, 15% at the highest end, maximum. This is not enough. Our recommendation is incentivize manufacturing of PCBs in India, incentivize higher value addition in India. Like, what would it make the value addition to go from 15% to 50%? How can we achieve that? So these are some of the recommendations we have. And number 2, the design. Though we say that India is a design major in semiconductor. How do we attract more companies? Because design growth is the lowest friction point kind of growth for electronics and semiconductor in India. Even today, we are not still designing laptops like a Dell or a HP laptop in this country. We are not designing a 4K or a 5K TV yet in the country. So how do we get into that? What kind of skills are required for that? How do we make India-made products, system level products? So these are some of the recommendations IESA has given. How do we make it easy for companies to come? Even the bigger companies are all here, like in Intel is here, HP is here, but they are all sort of growing their existing base. But how do we attract new companies? So we still have only maybe 25-30% of the global semiconductor companies operating in India. The remaining 70% is still not only US, but even in Europe, there are many companies who are not present in India. How do we attract them? So because the design generates high-value jobs, high-paying jobs, high-value jobs, which increases the tax revenue to the exchequer in a significant way. And they are the people who spend the maximum. So your GST collection also increases significantly by increasing the design jobs. We are recommending that don't lose focus of the growth of design industry in electronics and semiconductor while we do everything possible to increase, get the semiconductor manufacturing to the country, and also see how do we incentivize the value growth or value addition in India for products. So these are the general recommendations we have given.
So, I mean, IESA has already been taking a lot of initiatives. So, would you like to highlight any of your, recent case studies or some of your upcoming initiatives to build a talent sector or any other initiatives and some of your recent case studies, if you can kindly highlight that.
Sure, I will talk about a few of them, but then Anurag will fill in a lot more. So last year we published 2 reports: the semiconductor market study report, as well as the how India can, even before the fabs appear in India, how can Indian companies take part in semiconductor manufacturing supply chain? Semiconductor manufacturing supply chain consists of a large number of chemicals, minerals, gases. Some of them are available in India, and maybe 30-40% of them are available in India, and they are at different levels of purity and quality, etc., etc. How do you make them semiconductor grade and become a global player? So this was the second report. The third report, which we will release sometime in February, hopefully before the end of February, we're still trying to find. This is like every state in the country now wants to get onto the electronics bandwagon, want to get into the semiconductor manufacturing bandwagon. It is like saying that, okay, I also want to play in World Cup. Am I ready? So we brought out, we have just got a report ready, called the state readiness report. What are the gaps? What does the gap analysis show? Now, this is not a comparison between state A to B to C. We have decided that there are certain global references, like Haifa in Israel, made Haifa such a successful destination for electronics. Osaka in Japan, or Singapore for that matter. So there are global standards which we consider, which we can take today as a gold standard. Where are we compared to that? Any state, even the most advanced states of Tamil Nadu or Karnataka or all these places, where are we compared to these states? So we have brought out a report that will get released. The second one is where Anurag was directly involved. It's a compendium of policies. He will talk about it. What are the reports we are bringing out on the policy side? But other initiative that we are looking at, the IESA is running for the last few years, 3 to 5 years. One is a semiconductor accelerator system called SAFAL, semiconductor fabless companies. For electronics product companies, we are running Electropreneur Park both in Delhi and Bhubaneswar for electronic system companies. These are essentially startup accelerators. How can we take this and expand it to all the states in the country? A majority, let us say we have it in 2 states, can we take it to 20? What does it take? So we are in discussion with the MeitY on that, both for SAFAL and for Electropreneur Park. So this will be a major focus area for us in the coming financial year. And then, of course, IESA will definitely play a role at the national level when it comes to skill development. And you are absolutely bang on with your question. We are already part of the government's study committee. We have given our recommendations, but we will also probably launch some of the high-value skill development programs, because today one situation is where we say we have shortage of talent on one side. The other side, we have a large number of electronics engineers from Tier 2, Tier 3 colleges who are not able to make it to the deep tech employment because of the skill gap. So how do we bridge that so that if they get employed, number one, and number two, the shortages go away. Number three, the career in electronics becomes that much attractive because it's a high-paying job. If you have the right skills, it's a very high-paying job. So the economic activity that it will trigger will be phenomenal. So these are the activities, but I will segue to Anurag to talk about the policy document that's coming out. And then we are also working with a couple of embassies in bringing some joint intra-country kind of report. So let Anurag talk about it. Yeah, Anurag.
Thank you, sir. Nijum, to start with, first is the budgets. If you look at the budget, the government has done a fabulous job in getting a lot of policy sectors aligned insofar as the customs, the tax, the GST, etc., which are concerned. There just needs a little bit of synchronization in this. That's it. And more impetus has to be given now to component manufacturing in India. The more you give impetus to component manufacturing in India, the more Atmanirbhar you will become
Yes.
at the end of the day. Now, taking back as to what we have done in the last around 6-7 months, a large amount of canvas has been covered. Firstly, we are engaging with as much as 7 state governments, and will be guiding them through in various forms and means, including consultancy or even making up a DPR, so on and so forth, or setting up the ESDM oblique semiconductor clusters as time goes by. And what important thing that we've done is that last year we released 2 reports. This year, Mr. Krishna has already talked to you about the state readiness report, which itself will bring out every state as to where the gap analysis lies. In addition to that, there will be a report which will be possibly released next month. This is January, February, which is the basic policy compendium report. It stacks up on the national semiconductor policy, which was approved in the December of 2020. 2021, December 2021. And then most of the states do not have a semiconductor policy. They have an ESDM policy. So there's a semiconductor policy and ESDM policy. So we've stacked up on what the national semiconductor policy stays. Then we made a compendium out of it. So, what happens is that if you go to a particular place and says, what is Odisha giving you? Or what is Rajasthan giving you? So in a single frame, you can find out what SOPs it has to offer you in terms of water, electricity, infrastructure, in terms of land, in terms of acquisitions, in terms of connectivity, so on and so forth. So this is going to be a seminal report which we've all put together in IESA, and it will be released possibly next month. In addition to that, we are in major engagement with at least 2 to 3 countries. We want to harness their power to understand what they are actually looking at and how we can be a part of the system and how can they be a part of our system. So it is going to be a very collaborative effort, and then we'll get industry and the academia and the government all together in the same context, so that there's the potpourri is palatable and it gives a direction what we intend doing. Now, in addition to that, as Mr. Krishna said, fabless ecosystem is something that we are very, very bullish on, because we've got some very great thing happening in Safal, which is a model now, which has been accepted as a great model. So we want to propagate this model to a lot of other states, so that at least the fabless entities come into play before the actual fabs come into play at a later stage in time. It will be pivotal in the conduct of Semicon 2023 as the primary industry association on semiconductors. And we will also be looking at, and we are already publishing a large number of papers on the green processes. We are wanting green processes to come and see. You're starting from bottoms up right now. When you look at most of the fabrication facilities all over the world, they are all late 90s, early 2000 vintage. That is a time there was no COPE. That is a time there were no SDGs of the United Nations. Right? There were no green processes. There was no concept of ESG or sustainability.
Yes, yes.
So it is a great effort that you are starting on a blackboard where you are starting from bottoms up. So might as well build these practices into it. So we are also looking at that issue as well. So there is a large number of canvas, and touch points that ISA is now looking at. So you will see a large amount of traction in future. So you can imagine 7 state governments and the central government. That's the kind of reach we're collaborating with, and we are discussing things with them. So let's see. I think the future is very bright. I think in the next 1 year, a lot of things should come out from us in terms of policy as well as in terms of deliverables as we look at it.
So, gentlemen, when you speak about government did a fabulous job and speak of your initiative, one of the questions which I haven't added in the document, but I'd like to ask also that I have spoken to a couple of domestic manufacturers. Okay, during the Electronica event also, even after that also. Some of them are not actually, to be very honest, some of them are not actually very happy with some of the move, because according to them, you are calling it a make in India, but you are mostly inviting companies from abroad. It's like mostly FDIs. Okay. The GST rates are changing every month. For us, the taxation rates are high. So how can you say, how you are building the Indian industry, because you are inviting companies from abroad? So number one. So number two, when you speak of talents, mostly the engineers are now into softwares. Okay. Now the IITs and IIEEs are moving abroad. So do you think that this is why the talent gap is missing, in semiconductor and because people are not willing to work in hardware right now? So I mean, how do you, how do you highlight this?
You have touched upon a very important topic as to what is the preference of a student today when it comes to engineering education. From the 10th standard, 11th standard itself, he is only thinking of a software degree, then a job in a company like a Google or a Microsoft or something like that. I think there is a kind of a pattern that's been created in the minds of these students. So you're right in the extent of saying that the students coming to mainstream electronics hardware, CE, or anything related to electronics and communication or electronics and electrical is becoming a challenge. But then part of the problem here is because they are not aware of what's available. What does the future behold for a person who is good in semiconductor design or in electronics manufacturing?
From my side, you've touched the jugular vein of the system. See, skill is the core of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Right? Having said that, you must understand the problem is that when you look at let's start from the basics. So you look at 4 tiers, right? When it is 4 tiers, I think Mr. Krishna has come in. Let him finish, then I'll start.
Sorry, my phone ran out of battery suddenly. I didn't notice it, and so I had to change over to my laptop. So I was saying that. So how do we make the career in electronic system design or electronics manufacturing and electronics or semiconductor design attractive? Is first to make people understand. So one of the activities IESA is now doing is a program called Campus Connect. One of our EC members, Pradeep Thakur, ex-vice president from Marvel, is driving that initiative. We are trying to reach something like 1,000 universities in India who run electronics and communication courses. And we are even planning to take it to the 10th, 11th, and 12th classes in schools 6 months later. But first, we want to tell these people who are doing hardcore electronics engineering, don't use the escape route to software as your career option. Stay with electronics core. And then we also recognize that there is a practical problem that they have. That is of the quality of teaching of the core subjects. Electronics in tier 2, tier 3 colleges, I would say, is not great. It's not as good as what is there in IITs or NITs or IIITs. There are very few good colleges in the tier 2, tier 3 category. Not that there are not, but there are very few. Maybe you can count 10, 15 kind of numbers, not that's all. So how do we improve the quality of teaching? But unless we address the basic problems, saying that, okay, now you should come and join, they come for the interview, they fail, they say, okay, this is impossible, this is beyond me, so let me go and write Java coding, that is a better job, and it pays me decent salary, let me go the comfort way. So we need to ensure that these students are properly taught. So we are trying to create a mechanism wherein, one, there is an opportunity for the students to self-learn. That is what Campus Connect is all about. We get international lectures, make it freely available to the students from world-famous faculties. It will be available on IESA website. And we will ask the colleges to subscribe if they want to, but the students will get it free. Or we will give it to the students free initially at least. Secondly, we are also trying to put together a regular program wherein we are just working on it. So I can't announce it, but we are definitely working on it, where we can get top-of-the-line faculties from across the globe to run regular refresher courses for the faculties in tier 2, tier 3 colleges. Like, say, for example, a faculty would like to go through a refresher course in logic design. You may be able to get somebody from UC Berkeley, Dr. Lee. So like that, handpicked a group of faculty from NUS Singapore, from Delft University for analog design, Chandragasan from MIT. So we are trying to put together a mechanism, and we are working with the government also to make this happen. With this, probably we will be able to achieve both the objectives. One, making the awareness amongst the students the potential of this field. Secondly, making sure that they are taught properly so that they won't feel disappointed when they come for the test and interview in the job level. So this is the initiative we will have as a major activity in 22-23. I'm personally committed to do this, because this, I believe, is what we have to do minimum to increase employment opportunities, and also make, Nijum, the way it happens is, you will see the growth, but after some time, if it sort of saturates, and every company goes back to their corporate and say, oh, we are not able to grow, we are not able to find engineers. The corporate is not worried whether they are growing in India or somewhere else. They will go to another country. Maybe it's a Romania or a Hungary, right? Because at the end of the day, they want to run their business competitively. They are not going to wait infinitely for India to make the people available. So that is the mission that IESA is going to take over the next 2 years, to make sure that we have a good pipeline opened, a good mechanism to make sure that this pipeline remains open over a long period of time. And see, if we start giving message to the corporate world in US and Europe that our college faculties are taught by faculties from let's say the Stanfords of the world or the MITs of the world, that one message is enough. They understand, okay, now these people are serious about it. So that's what we are working.
This question is particularly Anurag sir, as you are working on a government affairs and policy. So when I spoke about the domestic players, I'll not say furious, but somehow they're saying, no, for us the taxation rate is high. We are not getting to know how to get benefit from the scheme. You are calling it a Make in India initiative, but ultimately it's like 100% FDI. The foreign companies are doing their business in India. So how do you call it a Make in India when the Indian players are not getting any opportunity?
Nijum, firstly, let me first tell you that insofar as skill is concerned, we've been talking about skill. Skill is a weapon. Okay, and you've seen how skill and your talent has been weaponized all over the world, and it will remain the same domain of getting weaponized. You've seen what's happened to vaccines. We're quite clear as to what happened to vaccines. I will not name what vaccines and what the context is, but I'm sure you understand what I mean.
Yes, I understand.
So the same story is going to be with skill. At the end of the day, at some stage in time, there will be nation states, there will be players who will put premium on the skill. If you don't train ourselves now, what Mr. Krishna said is it is the core of Atmanirbhar Bharat. That is one. So I will take these two questions separately. Second is, you look at this vicious circle which roams around in India. When a child or when a guy or a girl goes out of the the technical institute, the industry says he's not ready. Okay, the technical institutes squarely blames the school. The school says the syllabus is rigid. When the syllabus is rigid, the parents are saying that nothing is happening. You look at this circle.
Yes.
Right, so it's a vicious circle. Once the industry says he's not ready, the technical institute says that the school has not done its job. The school says the syllabus is rigid. The parents are also in the same quagmire. So this is in addition to the software lust of 30 years of people who want to only go and Googles and Microsofts of the world. So you must understand that. To a large extent, this is going to get solved by the national education policy. If you read national education policy, to a large extent, it will get solved by that, but it will take time. It is not going to be, Rome was not built in a day. It is not going to be adopted by tomorrow morning. It will take a couple of years to get adopted. Firstly, for mindsets to be adopted to it, because Indian mindset is not adopted to change. It takes a little while. The second thing is, when you look at the entire canvas of skill development, insofar as this is concerned, you start with ITIs, all ITIs all across India, not a single course in hardware.
Yes.
Right? When you look at the undergrad courses, in which Mr. Krishna has already brought out the software bubble, Microsofts and Googles, and return on investment, so nobody wants to get into hardware. When you come down to the MTech part, MTech, there's no major faculty which remains in India. It's far and few. Postdoctoral, most of the people go abroad and they never come back.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So they
Yes.
look at the canvas from certification to postdoctoral, it entirely needs an overhaul. if you look at the skill part of it. Now for the second part, whatever you're saying is, is in my understanding is a very numeric kind of a thing, that there's FDI and there's this and that. So where is the Atmanirbhar Bharat and so on and so forth? Technology costs. And technology is not for free. So either you start incubating technology, which will take you decades to do so. Alternatively, you catch hold of somebody who can do the transfer and know how to you, and then you adapt to it and do it as per your advantage. I think this latter is better. So keeping that in mind, the government policies are absolutely in line with what is required to be done. And we can have a debate over it, and I can actually prove it to you that they're absolutely spot on.
And,
No,
and
it's not a
Indian
debate, my concern, because it was looking that they were actually, somehow looking very furious. I mean, I was talking to them, this is for us, a taxation rate is very high. We are not getting to know, when the schemes are being
So
unleashed, how to get
I
the
mentioned to
advantage.
you,
Yeah,
I mentioned to you, you need to, you really need to synchronize customs tax GST. You synchronize this thing, half your battle is over. Right? So that's exactly the statement I made. You have to synchronize these three things. Now the problem is all three are in esoteric domains. To synchronize all three is very difficult. Not difficult for India, it is difficult for the world.
exactly.
Right?
and
So it's very
Nijum,
easy to say such things.
Nijum, the taxation aspect, I see, but the corporate tax has been brought down to 25%. I
Absolutely.
think it is absolutely on par with any advanced country. I mean, India need not
Any
actually
country
be
in the world.
any country in the world. So I don't think that should be a point of complaint at all. Right now, if the manufacturing companies are looking for what do you call, see, for semiconductor manufacturing, they have gone to the extent of saying that it is pari passu now. So you bring $1, I put $1 for the government. Right? It's a very fair kind of thing. I don't think any country has a policy which is as transparent and as good as this one. When electronics manufacturing, which started even before all these PLIs and all came into picture, they have a PLI and they have a spec scheme today, which either puts the what do you call your subsidies on the table by the government so that your capital cost comes down by 75%. So let us assume that you are depreciating 33% of the capital per year. So 7.5%, you are already having a cost advantage. 33% of 25% per year for the first 3 years, you already have been given a cost advantage. And then you get all the, depending on the state where you are, you have the land coming to you in subsidy, power coming in subsidy, water coming almost free, right? None of these companies who have the potential, and I've been talking to a lot of MSMEs over the last few months, they're not able to really scale up because the challenge is finding the right product mix, and a good technology partner.
Yes.
Right. So this requires certain what do you call? See, how did all these design companies come to India? Because Texas Instruments came to India in 1985, they set the shop and they said, okay, we will take the bet on India. People waited. 95 onwards, they were just standing in queue to come to India. Confidence was being created. So I would say today the easiest way, and that's where Anurag working with a few countries is making very, very important. You will see the impact of this initiative in the next 12 to 24 months. We are giving them the confidence that this is a place for you to come and find your partners, or you come and directly make the investment. Start making your PCBs, start making your capacitors, resistors, polymers, whatever you need. Confidence exercise has to be carried out. Then the manufacturing will happen. The moment that happens, components are coming out of India. Your 15% value addition automatically will go to 50%. So the solution has to be at the real source of the problem, rather than saying, oh, we need a tax break, we need this subsidy. The government cannot come and run the factories. The companies have to run the factories.
Exactly.
So this is where IESA is applying. See, that's why we call ourselves the knowledge partner, because we understand where the crux of the issue is, and that has to be solved. then it is a long-term solution. Otherwise, they will say, okay, now give me 2% subsidy. Okay, government will give 2% subsidy. And then something else, they will increase 4%. This will start again crying. That is not the solution.
What are the latest technological innovation you are, would like to witness in this sector in the coming few years, and what are the kind of chips do you think will be a game changer?
Real game changers are going to be on in AI chips. You will see AI playing like the chat GPT that you have already seen. There will be a lot of customized AI chips that will come out. So that will be one game changer for sure. The second game changer is we will see coming out of India. I'm sure in the next 2-3 years, supercomputers coming out of India. Computers which require significant amount of petaflops and tetraflops kind of computing power built in India, manufactured in India will happen. Now, the most recent thing that excited me was this Burroughs operating system, which IIT Chennai. And if we are able to get a few, I would say, clinching applications developed on that quickly, then Burroughs is going to give both Android and iOS a run for its money. I mean, this is where the population becomes your advantage. If every Indian starts using a Burroughs operating system, this is exactly like what China did. They took GSM standard, changed 2 sentences in that, and then said this is the China standard. Every country went running to China to develop China phones in mid-90s. It was 99.9% GSM standard. They just started 2 sentences. Said you have to develop phones to this standard, and it has to be certified in China. They will not go outside the country and certify it. Every company worth its Samsungs and Ericsson, Motorola, all of them went to China to develop the China phone. So standardization from India, our own operating systems, and now see, for example, India has automotive fuel standards like Bharat 3, Bharat 4, of things.
Yeah.
So those kind of innovation has to come, and I'm sure this will happen, particularly in electric vehicles. Particularly the two-wheelers. Yes. India is the largest producer. India is the largest consumer. So there is no reason why we should yield that market to anybody. It should stay with us, and we should define the standards. If somebody wants from China to send a product here, we will say, no, this is not meeting our standards, and not a certification agency sitting in Delhi should simply reject and throw him out into the Bay of Bengal. Do it for 2 years, the things will get straightened out.
So, although you have highlighted most of the things, they're starting to ask more. But if you can still sum up, where do you think the future of India semiconductor and ESDM sector you see in the coming 5 years?
ESDM sector, electronic systems design and manufacturing, India will be a global player. There's no doubt about it. And in 5 years, semiconductor design, India will be number 2 in the world. And semiconductor manufacturing, probably we would have got our first fabs operating in 5 years. It will take a little more time. It's a test match. You have to play a long innings for you to, like Rahul Dravids only can play there, not Surya Kumar Yadav. Very simple answer.
Anurag sir, if you would like to highlight.
Anurag, over to you for your closing comments.
See, Nejum, it's a Rahul Dravid story. It's 100%. See, I'll tell you why. Quality, Nejum, lies in numbers. So there's this Burroughs operating system which has come in. I'll give you an example. See the lovely blue jacket that you're wearing. Go to a vendor and tell him that, look, I've got a family wedding. I require 50 jackets. How much would it cost? He'll say it'll cost $2,500. You say that, look, I'm running a company now. I've got 8,000 employees. I want 8,000 jackets. How much would it cost? He'll say it'll cost you 1,000 rupees. Right. So it's the economy of scales. So quality always lies in numbers. The more people use your own thing, the more you will qualitatively enhance yourself. It's a very simple phenomena of economics and policy. Right. The second thing is in what I also feel that your major sunrise things are going to be is, one is EVs. You're going to be doing very big things in the EV two-wheeler segment, very, very big things, because there's a market. And then there are associated issues of the disposal of the batteries and so on and so forth. But the EV two-wheeler market is going to be very big. AI, Mr. Krishna has already brought it out. The third thing I think where we are going to be making a mark in times to come is going to be the critical microelectronics for defense and aerospace. If you look at the kind of push the government is giving to the defense and aerospace sector, everything is going to be running on the critical microelectronics. You look at a javelin today in the Ukrainian conflict. Each javelin has got nearly 100 plus chips. I hope you know that 100 plus chips. Imagine, and it is blasting off T-72s like a bunch of clay pigeons, right? So at the end of the day, these critical microelectronics are going to be the crux of all your weapon systems in the world. Then, of course, you have space-based applications in which you, as it is very high ahead in terms of various other things. So these things are going to be the game changers in times to come. So far as IESA is concerned, see, we are looking at 4 very major things. One is the handshake. That is you do the matchmaking. You get the bride and groom together. And they better be of the same requirements. Second is instill confidence. Look, everything's all right. Third, tell the environment and tell even the countries that you engage with that what are the Indian policies, and tell them that look, there is a lot of work at play. The fourth is be in a continuous engagement so that engagement gives rise to result.
So thank you, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for your time. And thanks for highlighting the picture in details. So one request is that on 18th of Feb, you said that you will be having some, some initiative in Delhi. So if there are some reports, if you publish, if you think that, we can highlight that, please feel free to send us those.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. As soon as the dates are finalized, Anurag will make sure that the invitation goes out to you. And as usual, talking to you is always a pleasure, Niju.
No, thanks a lot.
Always.
And I put a request to Anurag sir also, because for the past couple of months, I have been missing, your initiatives and events and your reports, press releases.
Okay.
I used to have it, but for a few months now, I'm not receiving it. So I'm not getting to know what are the kind of events you are having, what are the kind of initiatives and reports you are publishing. I'm not getting it actually. So
Anurag,
if you can
I've told Sophia.
Sophia, and also you can put a word to Shivani to make sure that the releases go to Nijum the day, along with all others. It should go to Nijum also. Okay.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nijum.
Thank you.
What a pleasure
Thank you.
talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good day. Good day. Bye-bye.